Yeah, so I'll start diving into the main meat of this. So last time I did one of these presentations, educational presentations on Arweave, I talked about the sort of intrinsic or foundational properties of Arweave as a data storage and processing system. In this video, I want to specifically talk about some of the things I think that enables and I think are impossible to build in an open at scale way on the web as it is right now. So I want to start off with a little bit of definition review. I defined most of these things in the previous video, but for those who haven't seen that, I would suggest if you're watching this, go back and watch that at some point, but I acknowledge that some people won't. So I'll review the ones that are most important for this video. So really simple, what's a value, right? A value is an immutable piece of information. A reference is a sequence of values through time. So in the previous video, I used the analogy or the example of a game. So if you're playing a board game, you can think of the game, the whole game, as a reference, and then the game states as values. So you start in some state, you go to another state. Each state that you go through, you're making moves on the board. Each one of those states in its entirety is a value, and then the reference is a way to refer to the progression of values through time as you play the game. Lots of other examples you could use too, but that's, I think, one that's fairly easy to think about and most people can relate to. Data addressability, another important concept. So data addressability is the ability to locate values by identifier. This is something we don't have right now in the web as it currently stands. What we locate is, we can look up locations. So all the data you have is out there on some server. And when you resolve something like a domain, like google.com or wikipedia.com or whatever, or .org, sorry. What you're doing is looking up the servers that are backing that, and then they give you the content. And, that works pretty well. It scales well, that looking up by location. But it doesn't give you any purchase on the data over time. You can't say, give me this Wikipedia page on this particular day 5 years ago and expect to get an answer unless someone is going to extraordinary lengths, like cool organizations like the Internet Archive are, to preserve that. There's no property of the system that intrinsically gives you that. Arweave does have data addressability built into it, and that's important. Identity/provenance, those words mean lots of different things in lots of different contexts, but in the context of a blockchain, specifically Arweave, all I mean is that all the content that goes into the system has cryptographic identities associated with them. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a person, doesn't mean you know who they are, but there is some notion of identity going associated with all data going into the system. So that's identity provenance. And then the last one, which is a new one, which I'm adding into this video, is just the term permaweb. And that's just a way to refer to a web-like thing. So like the existing web that we have, but permanent and based on Arweave. Or I suppose based on, some other hypothetical thing in case if Arweave were to falter for some reason. Though let's not go there. Let's keep Arweave working as best we can. So yeah, the permaweb is the permanent web, and it has all these other properties I mentioned above. Okay, so now getting into the main meat of this this presentation. I want to talk about a few things that are very relevant for tools of thought that I do not think you can do in an open way at scale without a permaweb or the permaweb. So the first is annotations. So what do I mean when I say annotations? So an annotation is just attaching your notes, your data, to someone else's content. So this is a thing, a lot of these things, I hope in the tools for thought space, people know what I'm talking about with these concepts, but I imagine a significant number of people out there just never really think that this, it just doesn't exist. Why would you even think about doing this? But it's unfortunate that we can't just write notes on web pages. So if you're on Wikipedia, for example, you see something on there, you want to write some notes on it, preserve it. You can't really do that in an open way right now. Now, there are tools, like I think Hypothesis is one of them. There are tools that let you do this right now, but over time, almost all those tools disappear, and there's a reason for that. So let's talk about what the PermaWeb adds to this picture. So I think to do this in an open, scalable way, you need permanence. You need that so that annotations can persist and remain attached to something. If, when you create annotations, they're not permanent, the service can go away, you can lose your annotations. At the same time, if you're attaching them to data that's not permanent, the data can go away, and you can lose what your annotations are attached to. Now, the alternative is you copy the data, and you're actually attaching your annotations to a copy, but that's less valuable. The service that has the copy could go away, and no one else, you lose the ability for other people to refer to the same thing that your annotations are attached to, unless they're also in that service. And then, it's just the same problem. The service can go away, and then you lose that attachment of the annotation to the content and the annotation itself. The other thing is values. So you need immutable values so that annotations remain attached to the same thing. If you attach an annotation to a page and the page changes, your annotation loses the context it was in. It might even lose like the literal piece of information it was attached to in the page. Someone might delete a paragraph, and now your annotation makes no sense and can't refer to a real place in the data. So in order for your annotations to retain their fidelity, you need values so that they can refer to immutable things. And then the last thing, which I've implied already, but you need data addressability. If what you're relying on is people running servers for you in a way where where there's not an incentive built into the overall system for them to run those servers, then your annotations can be lost. They're not preserved. You're just attaching them to server locations. So data addressability is fundamental for this to work too. And again, this is not meant to say like the existing services are bad. They're the best we can do. But if we really want to do this in an open, scalable way, immutability, permanence, data addressability, all these things are prerequisites to doing it in an open, scalable way. If you have a system where you have incentives for all these things baked into the system, you can do this. Optionally, references also add a ton of value to this. So if you have some sort of identity, I should not say identity because that's so overloaded in this context, but if you have something out there, I guess let's just stick with the game example, right? Like say you have some sort of system for recording chess games. I mean, this exists right now, but say you have that out there and it's just posting data to the PermaWeb. It's useful to have all the references that are attached to game states, or I'm sorry, all the annotations that are attached to game states associated with a reference to the game. I don't think this is essential. Like, as long as you can attach annotations as values to values, you already get a ton of value out of the system. But I think it's just a natural outcome that if you have permanence, values, and data addressability, people will build references, and then references can have this really rich history of annotations that they can associate with them. So not essential, but I think once you get the base things for annotations, references fall out. Like, people will just build them because they're useful. All right, hopefully that makes sense. I will double check my my chat just to see if there's any questions. No questions. So I will go on to the next example. Okay, the next one is, oh, did I not close? I did not. Hang on, let me actually close Slack. I didn't read that message. Might be something to blur afterwards. We'll see. Okay. Transclusion. So, what is transclusion? So, transclusion in the Tools for Thought community, I think those people know this, but broader, maybe not. So, it's embedding part of a page or piece of content, an excerpt of a piece of content, in another page without copying. So, right now, what we typically do when we want to refer to something somewhere else is we'll either just link to it and really hope the wherever we're linking to doesn't change, or we'll copy it, or we'll copy it and link to it. But what we don't do is get an address for a part of a page and use that to refer to the content from the page. There are some exceptions, right? Like we do this with videos, things like that. But like a simple example would be, I have a personal blog. Like if I don't currently, but if I did have a personal blog and I wanted to get an excerpt from someone else's personal blog, and we're just hosting them on random hosting services, I'm just going to copy and refer to it. I'm not going to say, here's the address within the other person's blog of exactly the quote I want to pull out. Doing the address thing to include it would be transclusion. Doing the copying thing is not. Okay, I think given the annotations example I gave, I think it should be pretty obvious already why this can't work right now. Someone could be changing that page. The page could go away. Stuff is just going to break all over the place. The exceptions to this right now, where we do things like embed videos, are heavily reliant on these central entities like Google, who owns YouTube, maintain these things over time. And I think it's great that they do. Like, YouTube, I think, is one of the, all these things have problems, but it's one of the most powerful educational tools that we have currently. So it's phenomenal that we have them, but I think we can do a lot better if we shift things so that all the content is permanent. Then we can do this for everything. You can just, start embedding stuff from random places on the internet, Wikipedia pages. You have no fear of it changing. So you need permanence so that the page won't go away. You need values so you know that the content won't go away, which would instantly break for transclusion, right? If you had an address of something and the content started changing, like instantly, that's a problem. And then again, you need data addressability to embed the location of the data, not the servers, because the server locations change. You need a way to refer to the data itself. So all these things are fundamental for having an open transclusion system on the internet, one that is not reliant on central entities for its continued existence. I think that's clear. I don't think I need to say anything more than that. I'll quick check the comments here. Good on comments. Okay, the last one I want to talk about, and this one gets a little more subtle, is back references. So again, Tools for Thought folks probably don't need to explain this, but I will for anyone else. So you see I'm using LogSeq. It's one of these newer note-taking tools that has more fancier concepts of hyperlinking and embedding content. And you'll see at the bottom here, one linked reference. So what is this? Let me just go to this page. Thankfully, not much on it. I would want to obscure. So this is a daily note where I have, I say, okay, I was reviewing the notes for this stream. I guess that was prior to the stream. And then I was starting to work on the stream. And I'm not actually a heavy user of like this kind of tool for journaling, but it illustrates the point, right? So this is a page that links to this other page. When I click on this other page, I go there and I see what has linked to it. So back references are a list of inbound links from elsewhere. In the context of LogSeq, some of these other tools, mostly it's within your own notes. But we could imagine doing this for the whole web. And actually, I think Google could do this right now. I've thought about it some. I don't think there's any fundamental reason they couldn't. I don't think, I don't think there's any. They have the indexes. I think it's something they could do if they wanted to, but it's probably somewhat niche. Like people don't even know that this is a thing that you could do. If they released it, most people would probably just be like, what? And not really know what to do with it. I think there's probably some challenges in scaling it with a mutable web, and I have no idea what they would do to monetize it. Like, so there's maybe social economic dynamics that prevent it from really being a thing that's built out now. And of course, we would prefer that these systems be open and not reliant on Google or other, really large, powerful indexing entities to maintain them for us. So I think permanence enables this in a few ways. And I'm still sort of formulating my ideas about what this might look like at scale. But if you have permanence, immutability, and public data, if you make an index, even if it's an incomplete index, right? Like it's not an index of everything, the index never needs updating. Like as long as it is accurate within its own scope, so maybe it's not covering everything, so it covers part of the permaweb. First of all, it's never going to go out of date for what it covers because it covers that thing at a point in time. Second, it can be used by future indexes. So you could either have new indexes that kind of forward to other indexes. You say, okay, I built this new index. It's referring to this new content. Oh, and if you want this old content, you go look at this old index. Or the new indexes could read the old indexes in, or they could directly extend them in some way. So you could imagine like append-only tree structures, which exist and are pretty efficient. I'm still kind of looking into them to sort of see what the bounds of the efficiency and scalability of those are. But there are existing append-only tree structures that are pretty good. So you could imagine just having a big index that gets extended over time. And the key thing is these indexes can all refer to each other safely because you know that nothing is going to change out from under these indexes. Nothing's deleted. Nothing is updated. Once the indexes are built, things are only added. And that is fundamental to be able to build upon these things over time. The exact mechanisms about how you put it all together, still a little bit of an open question in my mind. And of course, data addressability is one of those things that's really foundational to this too. If what you're indexing is places, yeah, really only the big entities that are scraping the system regularly could do this right now. If you have data addressability, lots of people can index little parts of the thing and it's fine. Like you don't have to worry about it breaking. You don't have to re-index it all the time. And the lack of needing to re-index the old stuff all the time, I think, is really the key to getting a flywheel going that lets you build these things and maintain them at scale. Yeah, so this one is still one that's kind of being built out in my head a little bit. But I hope that gives you a flavor of why I think it shifts, like a permaweb shifts the dynamic on back references to where we can really start to build this stuff at scale. And, maybe lots of people don't use it, but just being able to incrementally build it and add to it would let a small community of people start building these things out. All right, so that's back